Hi, my name is Alana Graham Sims, and I am the Senior Community Affairs Coordinator for Gas South. I'm also a member of the Young Alumni Council, and I serve as the Student Relations Subcommittee Chair. We are here for another installment of Best of Blue. Best of Blue is a virtual interview series shedding light on relatable topics for the young alumni experience. Through this platform, we are highlighting alumni and the amazing work that they've done in the community. In this installment, we'll be discussing navigating mental health as a professional. We're getting ready to introduce our panelists for today. We have Mallory and Matthew. Hi, thank you guys for joining.
Hi.
Hey, good
How are y'all
evening.
doing?
Doing
Doing
good.
Thank you
well.
so much for having us.
Of course. If you will, please just give a short introduction kind of about your journey at Georgia State, what you majored in, what you're doing now in your career fields. We can start with you, Mallory.
All right, so I'm Mallory. I graduated from Georgia State in December of 2014. I graduated with a bachelor's in sociology and a minor in Spanish. I went on to pursue my master's at UGA, and I got a master in social work, and I'm now a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a mental health clinician. I work with crisis mental health situations like suicide, psychosis, addiction, overdose. I work in settings like hospitals, jails, things like that. In my other life, I work in outpatient mental health, working to prevent those crises. So I do private practice where I provide therapy to adults that are struggling with anxiety and depression.
Matthew?
Yeah, thanks. Matthew McCurdy um, at Georgia State, graduated in 2012 with a degree in political science and a minor in sociology. After that, I went on to Emory University, the Rollins School of Public Health, and got my master's in public health, behavioral science. Long career path since then, but ultimately led me to founding my own nonprofit, Black Health. Black Health is really focused on providing health education on the impact of race and racism on health outcomes for Black folks. We do programming, initiatives, social media campaigns, really in bringing awareness to the things that are impacting our community. So it's been a fun journey, and happy to dive more into that on the panel.
Wow. I'm trying to get like y'all. Listen, the accolades are stacked up if you didn't know already. Okay. Can I hear a little bit about just from both of you how you feel your time at Georgia State kind of prepared you for your professional career? And either one of you can start. Maybe Matthew, we start with you this time.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think I really enjoyed my time at Georgia State. I think I learned a lot about discipline. Um, whether or not I was always disciplined, I ultimately learned a lesson in discipline because of the outcomes that happened. I think Georgia State's also just a great place to connect with people from the city. I think that's led directly to me being a part of, Lead Atlanta class of 2024 now. Um, that I can draw a line from that time at Georgia State now to where I am now. I think I really also learned a lot about myself at Georgia State, and I think that's going to happen at any college, about what I like to do, the things that I'm really good at, my skills, but also my weaknesses, and really being engaged with the professors, the academics, but also just the student life there really showed me a lot about myself. So I enjoyed my time at Georgia State, and I always tell people I feel like it was the best place to prepare me for where I am now. And I wouldn't have gone to any other undergrad institution.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Mallory?
So for me,
I was just talking to one of my friends the other day, and we were talking about how Georgia State does such a great job with preparing you to network. And
Mhm.
so I would say that networking and the friends and the professional and social experiences and exposure is unmatched at Georgia State. You go to school literally in the middle of the city, and you have to be prepared at any time to meet any person. And it's so nice to also have lifelong friends that are doing great things, because that's something else that's motivating to you and very validating when you're on your journey. to look around and see excellence all around you, you know that you're in good company and you're doing something right. So that's the biggest thing that I would say that Georgia State gave me.
That's wisdom if y'all didn't know. So make sure you wrote down what they said. Both of y'all said something that really stuck out to me. Mallory, you with the networking. I mean, that's what we're doing right now is networking, building our own personal and professional brands and backgrounds and getting to know other people and having other alumni be able to find you all and connect. And, you might share something today that somebody's like, "Ooh, I definitely need to connect with them," whether it be professionally or it be personally, like, "Hey, I need some of these resources that you could connect me to." So I really love that networking piece. And then Matthew, you mentioned something really great about it helps you learn a lot about yourself. And just to kind of start off our conversation on mental health, how important is it to know yourself or to learn more about yourself when you're looking at your mental health journey? Mallory, would you like to start? Oh, go ahead, Matthew. Yeah.
I was going to give it over to Mallory. I can start though. I think I'll, go back to Mallory. But I think first, what I would say about knowing yourself is you have to recognize when you're off, right? So, it's important to realize that, I've been feeling this way for a couple of weeks. This is actually not my norm. I should check in with somebody, get some assistance. So I think the process through knowing your emotions, when your emotions are out of whack and when they've been out of whack consistently, I think is really a part of that mental well-being journey. So that you have a baseline, so you know that you're either above or below that baseline. Mallory, I think you have the expertise to probably better answer that question.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I love what you said. And in addition to knowing your baseline, I think it's important to keep the things that are important to you and that keep you full, keep your cup full, always in your life. You have to know what those things are, though. So you have to spend some time to know yourself better, to gain that awareness, to know when are your warning signs peaking, or when are you experiencing a trigger or something that's a potential trigger. And then are you keeping the things that keep you good in your life? So I think that's a big part of it.
Perfect answers, honestly. And even when you said triggered, I know a lot of people now say activated. This activated me to react a certain way. But I definitely want to go ahead and get into kind of our first topic of like post-grad depression and even dealing with imposter syndrome. We know those are things that can definitely come up when you're starting your career. And so I just want to ask you both, alums can experience hidden depression and high functioning anxiety through post-graduation. Can you kind of elaborate on what those are and then possible symptoms, Mallory, that people can look out for those?
yeah, for
Sure.
sure.
So post-grad anxiety and depression can come for a lot of different reasons, right? So this is the first time in life for many people that you've ever lived life without a template. Okay, there's not anyone telling you how to do these things. However, you're expected to do these things. And there's a lot that falls under that. You have finances, housing, health, career, relationships, romantic, and in the workplace. And there's no one telling you how to do it. You also have some people who have studied something for so long and now it's useless or they don't want to do it anymore. Or you may have messages telling you that you're supposed to do these things, but you just don't have the support for how to get there. And so, with all of that, it can cause anxiety, depression. So, that looks like excessive worry that you can't control, restlessness, fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating. You might have issues with sleep. You might have weight loss, weight changes, loss of appetite, sleep issues, and also, sometimes people have times where they're trying to escape life and escape the realities of life. That might look like using drugs, drinking excessively, putting yourself in risky situations, maybe even harming yourself, cutting yourself as an emotional release. And then sometimes people have thoughts about death and dying, just wanting to escape it all, maybe wanting to go to sleep and not wake up, or just feeling like they're a burden and that things are never going to get better, feeling hopeless. So those are like that's the list of symptoms. We can all look those up on Google, right? Yeah. But what's more important than that is recognizing how they may show up in our life. And so it may be where you're snapping at people and you don't normally snap like that. It may be where you find yourself endlessly scrolling and your screen time is up higher because it's a form of escape, right? It might be where you're gaining weight and yeah, you're upset about gaining weight, but you're not noticing that you've been eating more, or more difficult to get out of bed and you don't want to go to that party or that friend gathering that you would normally go to because you just don't have the energy or you're not motivated. So those are things to pay attention to with that.
Thank you. That was really good. Listen, you basically talked about the entire summer after I graduated from undergrad. So I really appreciate that. Matthew, just for you on the public health side, are there any type of effects that you've seen just through public health for people who may be experiencing depression, like what it may affect in their actual health within their bodies?
Yeah, I mean, I think we know that there's a link between your mental and physical health, right? And so the things that you experience mentally actually will have a physiological effect on your body. So induced stress can also lead to health complications in other areas. And so it's important that we really prioritize our mental health because it can, if we leave it unchecked, it can transfer into other areas of our lives and other areas of our health. I'd also say that from a public perspective, not only do we have individual triggers, but we have collective triggers, right? So you want to think about when there's large scale events like school shootings is just one example, or we see something that happens that affects a lot of people. We also want to be cognizant of how we digest information. And so a recommendation that I give a lot of people is like, you really have to watch the media that you bring into your home and into your life, right? So it's easy to bring in things that can trigger us or upset us via our cell phones or via computers. We have to really monitor and watch that. And I think that's on a collective scale, just not individually.
That's definitely a huge point that I didn't think about. Just what are you consuming and how is that showing up in your life? Is it affecting you? Thank you both for those answers. I do kind of want to jump into that applying for jobs. I know that can have a lot to do with a lot of people's post-grad depression. So just when applying for jobs after graduation, we all know it can be tough. How can people navigate imposter syndrome in the application and interview process?
Yeah, I think applying for jobs, interviewing is all a practice of vulnerability, right? And, being vulnerable is difficult. Putting yourself out there for someone else to judge you, for someone else to, respond to what they think your qualifications are worth is a difficult thing to go through. So, my first recommendation is that it's normal, right? We really have to normalize imposter syndrome because it happens to everyone, from the folks that we think are the most accomplished down to people who we feel are regular like ourselves. So, first it's really just to normalize and understand that most people are dealing with that. And then I think once you navigate through that, I think of Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, at one point, someone was asking him about, whether he was worried about an upcoming challenge or an upcoming player. And he was like, I'm Kevin Durant. Y'all know who I am. And I think we just have to continuously remind ourselves of our accomplishments, right? Like, we've done X, Y, and Z. We're at Georgia State, we graduated, we're here in this application process now, where we get the chance to interview. That we have to really celebrate our accomplishments and not focus on the negative. And then I think thirdly, you really want to look at those negative thoughts, right? And I think Mallory can probably talk to this a bit more articulately, but once you notice that you're having a negative thought, it's really important to then challenge that thought. So, it can creep in to say like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not going to get this position, or this is meant for someone else. And we have to quickly walk that back, remind ourselves of our accomplishments and who we are. And then I think we can challenge these assumptions that we make about the processes that we're going through. One final thing that I'll go through, and this is, just sort of a personal thing that I deal with, is like I'm always seeking perfection, right? I'm probably a perfectionist to the T, but life is really about learning and growing and not being perfect, right? And so even if you don't get that job or get that role, what can you learn from that process? What's going to allow you to grow so that the next time you have an interview, you're better prepared and you're ready for that opportunity.
I love that. And you talked about gratitude. When I was an RA, one of the kind of programs that we put on for our residents was actually making gratitude jars that they could decorate. And then as they would accomplish something or just think about different things that they were grateful for in their lives, they would put that in there and take it out whenever they were having a hard time, just to remind themselves to have gratitude. So I really love that. Mallory?
Okay.
So with imposter syndrome, I just think it's important to remember that it is has a lot of anxiety that goes with it. And the core of it is feeling like you're a fraud, feeling like you're not really who you say you are, despite the objective things around you, right? So a big way to fight that is preparation, researching yourself and researching your subject. Okay, so understanding when you're going out and applying for jobs, what is the landscape and the ecosystem that you're going to be in? What industry are you seeking to be in? How is it there? Are you comparable to the other candidates there? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're talking about? And that's important because yes, we can give positive affirmations and say that we're so great, but the reality is that social media culture has a lot of us flexing, right? So if you already feel nervous and anxious, and you're going out and you're putting on fraudulent behavior, then yes, you are going to feel like that. So part of it is to research yourself and research the landscape, know what you're walking into, and that will help you with your confidence, right? Okay. Also, knowing your core values, knowing what's important to you, knowing the things that you cannot live without, and knowing the reason why you keep getting up and doing things. That's going to guide you in your decisions. It's going to help you to know when a job is like, that's not really for me anyway. I need this instead because this is the most important thing to me. And when those things can change throughout life, but when you have those as your guidance, your guiding light, you don't get away from those, and you don't have to feel bad about getting a rejection or a no. It's not a failure. It's just not a good fit for you. Also, another thing is sacrificing. I think that we have to be comfortable, and this is a Georgia State thing for sure. We have to be comfortable with sacrificing. Things are not social media. Again, it makes you feel like you can have everything that you see. When you scroll and you see someone with something, it makes it seem like you can have that too. And then it makes you feel like you can have everything that you see. And that's just not true. Because when you see that post, you don't see the rest of the person's life that makes up their whole being, right? So we have to be comfortable with sacrificing things. If you don't want to have that job where you're in a cubicle, what does that mean for you? If you don't want to do the hustle thing, what does that mean for you? Like, I feel like sometimes we got to eat noodles and it's okay. Life will go on. Maybe you don't go to that social gathering or you take a dating hiatus or whatever that means. But keeping your values at the front and being able to do that will help you. Of course, the network, I've already said that. And then if you do these things and you prepare, you know the landscape, you know yourself, you know how you fit into all of this, and you've positioned yourself properly, you can stand on business and feel okay with that. I think a lot of times people stand on business and then they don't like the consequences that come with it. And then they find themselves in a depressed state or they're anxious because they have now put themselves where they can't make rent because they stood on business. Well, that probably wasn't what you were supposed to stand on. So that, you got to go back through the steps and you got to do some research and figure out what are your values? What are the things that are important to you? But once you do those things, you really can say, no, I come with these things. And I know that I've looked at the other candidates and I know what I bring to the table. And I know that I'm not going to accept this and I'm okay with that. And I think if you do those things, you can have a much better, you're still going to feel how you feel. Imposter syndrome is real and it affects minorities more than anybody else. So you're going to still feel like that, but you're going to have better outcomes if you take those steps and you know what you're dealing with when you walk into the space.
That's Mallory really said y'all standing on the wrong business. Okay.
What I see, Alana. I'm just talking about what I see.
But you're right. Somebody out there that spoke to them. Okay. So don't take it back. That spoke to somebody. But I do want to get into a little bit about what you said. And I have a question for both of you really related to imposter syndrome. Is that the same thing as faking it till you make it? Because you hear fake it till you make it like it's a good thing, but then when you was talking about fraudulent with the imposter syndrome and doing your research and different stuff. So would you feel that it's the same as fake it till you make it, or there is a big difference?
So in my experience, there is a big difference, right? Fake it till you make it is acknowledging that, like, okay, I don't feel the best in this room right now, but I'm gonna walk in and I'm gonna have my head held high because I got an invitation. I belong here. I'm supposed to be here, right? So you may not feel that way, but you're going to fake it till you make it. You're gonna talk to people. You're gonna get out of that nervousness that you have, and you're gonna extend yourself. Having imposter syndrome coming from the fraudulent thing is when you're not who you say you are. When you are posing in a certain way or positioning your camera in this way or renting the car so that it can look like you have this car or renting the clothes so it can look like you have those clothes. That's not faking it till you make it. That's living a lie. And you're trying to outrun your lie and it's stressing you out. So those are different.
Okay,
In my
thank
opinion.
you. Matthew, and on another tip of what kind of Mallory said, tell me a little bit about hustle culture and how that can affect your mental health. You starting a nonprofit, like that's a hustling thing. Nonprofit, everybody knows that's a hard field, but tell me a little bit about hustle culture and has it affected you in any way or how it can affect anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes. Like the plain answer is yes. Hustle culture, this desire to have everything, team no sleep, those types of things, I think certainly have an impact on on who I am and how I try to work. But I think, and this is again back to Mallory's point, as we think through the media that we're consuming, right, and that comparison that we have on social media, a lot of that stuff that we're ingesting and a lot of that stuff that we hear is not actually real, right? So people are sleeping, people are taking time off to get to apply themselves to other areas of their lives. But what they're showing you on Instagram or what they're showing you on their social media is only the work. And I think we get caught up in that because, plainly speaking, like this work is competitive, right? There's only finite resources, and we feel like somebody's going to outwork us and someone's going to do better than us if we're not pushing ourselves to the extreme. But then you'll crash, right? I can confess that I've had moments in the last few years where I've worked myself into sickness, right? Because I'm overworking, because I'm not taking the time to sleep, rest, nourish my body. And then, once I'm sick, like I can't work at all, right? I'm down for the count. So there is no hustle culture if I need to stay in bed for a week, right? And so it's important that we have that balance between work and the rest of our life in order to be well, so that we can go after the things that we want to.
Thank you. Matthew, have you seen maybe different age groups or maybe even minorities? They are less likely to say that they are having certain symptoms or different things when they go to the doctor because they feel like it shows a sign of weakness kind of going along with that hustle culture, or, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and people are kind of timid to say that they may be experiencing a symptom or anything to a healthcare professional.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge question, but I can speak about Black people in particular. I know that I was told when I was young, right? Like I have to work twice as hard, right? You have to do twice as much in order to get, half of what other people get. And I think that, in some parts it's true, and it speaks to, sort of structural racism and what's happening in our society. But in some respects, like we have to rest, right? We have to find opportunities to rest. And I think even more so when we go into a physician's office or if we're speaking to our therapist about what's happening, we have to be honest because those are spaces designed to help us, right? And we can't get the help that we need if we're not honest about what's happening in our lives. And then if you feel like, and this is probably a tangent, but if you feel like that medical expert isn't giving you the support that you need after you've been honest, then you have to go find someone that will. One of the most important things that I talk about often is, you have to understand the standard of care that you desire and that you deserve. And if your physician, your medical professional is not meeting that, then it's okay to fire them and find someone else.
I love that. On the fire them, okay? You have to find the people that work best for you and your health, whether that be your mental health or your physical health. So thank you for that, Matthew. Just encouraging people to continue to be honest in those spaces. And it's also okay that it may not be you sometimes. Like if someone's not listening to you, it's fine to go and find help somewhere else. So thank you. Just a little bit on that hustle culture, moving away from it. Some of us are trying to do better. Can y'all tell me some work-life balance or stress management trends that you all have seen or that you practice yourselves? And Mallory, we can shoot it to you.
Okay.
Well, this is a trend that I've seen. I'm not saying that it's great, but I've seen with the baby boomers exiting the workforce and Gen Z entering, there's been a lot, and since COVID, there's a lot of, I want to do less work, but I want to make more money. Okay. And I'm not mad at that strategically. I am not mad. But the problem comes when that's the expectation. That math does not math. When that's the expectation and the expectation is unmet, and then it gets you to a place where you are depressed and anxious and you feel like a failure and you're hopeless because of that, that's not good. That's not a good place to be. So I think there needs to be some reevaluating on those expectations for what does work-life balance mean at this place, at this firm, at this financial level. What does this mean? Because again, we keep talking about the socials, but it is such a big impact that affects that.
Yeah.
And then I think that the other part of this is I see this kind of thing happen on two ends, right? We have the person that is working so hard and they never sleep, the hustle culture person, because they're trying to sustain this lifestyle that they feel they're supposed to have. And then we have the person that doesn't want to have any job because they're waiting for the dream job. They don't want to take the entry level position. They don't want to do the job and the side hustle because they need to have their peace, right? So they don't want to do anything. And they end up, instead of liberating themselves like they're trying to, they end up actually putting themselves in bondage because they're always sad and depressed because they can't do anything they want to do and they can't make the rent like they want to, and then they feel bad. So that's kind of the struggle with the balance that I've seen in the trends. As far as strategies, though, to create balance, I believe in morning and evening routines and rituals. Also, during the workday, blocking off your calendar and having people request time on your calendar, taking walks, of course, keeping a separate place for your work outside of where you do other things if you do work from home. And then I really love, especially with the work that I do, I implement a break in my day after I'm done with work, after finishing work and entering my personal life. I have something that I do that lets me make that transition so I get out of work mode. And I think all of those are super helpful for me. Of course, meditating is a great one to start your day, and movement. So those are the ones I would say.
I love block that calendar, request my time. Thank you. Okay. And even just the transition from work to personal. I think that's so important. Like there are certain spaces where you just can't jump in and out. Your brain is still there, even though your body physically in it. So I think that's definitely important. Matthew, any trends that you've seen or anything that you practice yourself?
Yeah, something that I'm practicing a bit more now and trying to integrate throughout my workflows is really just blocking entire days to do work. All right. So rather than, you know, having meetings across all of my days, I want to spend my Mondays and Thursdays doing deep dives on work so that I can accomplish what I need to throughout the week. Because what I find is that people will put meetings on your calendar, then things that are urgent to them then become your problems. Right. So rather than you prioritizing the work that you need to do, you're prioritizing their work, their problems, and then that disrupts your workflow for the week. So yeah, I'm a big fan of blocking that calendar. Hey, can I meet on this day? Sorry, this is a work day. I'm doing, a deep dive on XYZ. Can we meet on this next week? Because I find that, we want to have a work-life balance, but we aren't accurate. We aren't diligently managing the work. So then it flows over into the life. Right. And so we're spending our Saturdays trying to catch up. We're spending the evenings trying to get work done because we spent the full day in meetings. And so when there's opportunities to create those boundaries around work, I think you have to be really, really, really strategic. And then I'd say on the life side, it's really about finding things that re-energize you, that really bring value to your life. I think for some people that can just be rest. For some people that's being with family, being with friends. I think a part of hustle culture is also like, I need to monetize all of my hobbies, right? But we can do things just for fun, right? We can do things just to have an experience, right? And so I think we have to be sure that, we're spending the time outside of work doing things that really provide value to our lives, re-energize us, so that when we do have to go back into work mode, we can do that with the focus it requires.
I love that. Listen, your emergency is not my urgency. And I also don't feel like I'm good enough at any of my hobbies to actually monetize them. So they are really just a hobby.
There are people who are not good enough at their hobbies who are still
Yeah.
trying to monetize their hobbies. So
And shout out to them because they believe in themselves and the dream. I definitely want to talk more about just how can you improve your mental health. We talked a lot about meetings. We talked about, hybrid work culture and things of that nature. And so how do you kind of prioritize your mental health when you're constantly on a screen in this hybrid environment?
Yeah, I can go first on this one. I think, I've been hybrid I've been virtual remote since 2018. And some of the lessons that I've learned there are really just around asking, does this need to be a Zoom meeting, right? Can this actually be a phone call? And I think even the pressure around a phone call versus a Zoom meeting really feels different, right? I can go for a walk when I'm on a phone call. I can be outside. And so finding some opportunities to reduce your time staring at screens. Um, I think for those of us who are working in companies, you have your employee resource groups, right, who can provide opportunities for you to think about what else is available out there rather for your support, right? And so we're thinking about whether there's support groups or employee activities, right? I think those can be really useful for finding connection outside of the screen, right? So if there are in-person engagement opportunities that you have, and I know that's not available to everyone, really taking advantage of the time to connect with people in person. I think that's missing a lot from our current workforce. And I think the last thing I recommend is just really practicing mindfulness. And I'd say mindfulness and then also stretching. So mindfulness is really just, reducing your stress through deep breathing, meditation, taking the time to really connect and recenter. And then also just standing up, moving your body has, immense benefits for your mental health. So whether that's, if you're physically able to take a walk, stretch, there's like chair stretches that you can look up as well. And I think those type of activities will also re-energize you and can be beneficial for your mental wellness.
Thank you. Mallory?
I was going to also say the movement piece, I think, is very important. I just believe in starting your day or ending your day with moving your body. And then also meditation, and the same thing, starting or ending your day, or even having it throughout your day. Moments of meditation, you can just do 5 minutes, look up something on YouTube, and just take a second to get back into your body. I think that can be very helpful too. We don't pay attention to how throughout the day there are little things that happen that kind of chip away at ourselves. It may be the person that pops up, at your office, and now they're talking to you, throwing you off your plan, right? Or it may be the traffic. You said 2 hours in traffic and you were feeling on edge the whole time, and then you go in and you have to turn on how you're supposed to be at work. And we don't pay attention to those things. So moving and meditating can help you kind of reorient back into yourself and refill that cup.
Definitely. I think the time for me, like I go to the gym and then I go to work to be in the office to see people, so to get that connection. But I think the time that I spend getting ready in between gym and work is like my woosah time to get ready to fight whatever battles I need to fight in that office for the day. But I didn't realize it until I realized like, oh, I actually enjoy this little bit of time to myself, whether it's, music on or just kind of preparing myself. So I think so much we're rushing to go from here to there, do whatever, even with working and getting into the groove. Like a lot of the things that you all mentioned require you to have the mindfulness to kind of stop what you're doing and remind yourself to go do those other things, take a walk, do a call instead of a Zoom meeting, stuff of that nature. So it's definitely about everyone, anyone watching is just making sure that you are mindful and you're kind of creating this routine for yourself. How hard did you all feel it was for you to kind of get into some of those habits? Because sometimes you start working and you just don't stop. So did it take you a while to implement it? Were there any strategies where it kind of became a part of your normal day to day?
Yeah, certainly. I think I live by my calendar, right? So I will schedule workouts. I will schedule time to walk. I'll get a notification that, the Apple Watch is good about telling you to stand up. Um, but I think it's also communicating to others about what you're doing so that, they can respect your boundaries, right? So even, hey, I have this protected time at the end of my day where I'm transitioning out of work and into work. I would prefer not to schedule meetings from 4 o'clock on, so I can wrap up my tasks, right? And I think, I think you have to communicate your boundaries. I'm not telling you to tell your boss what you will and will not do. Don't get fired because of me. But I think it's important that, you communicate what's going to work for you to allow you to be the best employee. And I think a supportive boss or supervisor should then support that. Something else that I have to do and I recommend to folks, and it may sound a little tedious, but, keep Slack, Teams off of your personal device if you can. And then if you do have to have it, right, mute those notifications at certain times of the day, right? You can't be on all day. And the job that expects you to be on all day is really going to be taxing to your mental health. And so, use those settings within your phone to mute those notifications. I know people who actually will delete Slack, re-download it the next day at the workday, and do that every day, so that they aren't getting those notifications, because those things are triggering, right? Even if you're not thinking about work, that little sound going off will bring you back into a work environment, right? And so you want to be really careful about those things too.
I love that. Mallory, anything you want to add?
I love what you said. For me, I was similar to you, Matthew, and I was sat down back in 2019, and I was forced, 2020 in the beginning, pre-COVID, I was forced to sit down because I was in a very toxic work situation, and it taught me invaluable lessons about how precious our minds are. And I just see people get in those same situations because, again, we don't pay attention to these things that eat at us over time. So I was forced to create a routine, and just unfortunately, it came right around COVID time. So I had a lot of time to figure out what worked for me. And my morning routine is immaculate, if I do say so myself.
I love that's
I
why
want to hear more about the routine.
Yeah.
Oh no, we'll talk about that offline. It's very
That is why her skin is so clear, y'all. She's not playing about that morning and night routine. They are really dropping gems. Like, just big things I heard was for sure talking to your supervisor, manager, whoever, about setting those boundaries for yourself, for your own work-life balance. And I know that there can be a lot of anxiety around that, especially for me when I came into the workforce. I came in 2021. So we were still kind of in COVID times. And so that was a lot of when Gen Z was going into the workforce and things were different. Like we had different expectations. A lot of our internships as well were also hybrid. And now we're going back into offices, and there's a certain type of corporate culture that we weren't necessarily used to. And so I was fortunate enough to have a really good manager that showed me kind of her own boundaries, and I was able to walk that walk similar to her. So I think it's really important for everyone to make sure you figure out what those boundaries are and make sure that you are communicating them with someone. And similar to what Mallory said, like, you'll start to notice things that you care for and what you don't in a workplace. And so when you're trying to, applying for jobs or applying for a new job, looking at that company's culture, looking at what past employees have said, looking at reviews, not just looking at what's on Google, what they want you to know about them, but just kind of looking behind the scenes or reading between the lines about what the culture of that company is and whether or not it's more of that hustle culture or somewhere where they really value their employees and their well-being. So thank you both for that. I really appreciate it. We're coming close on time, and so I do definitely want to make sure that we're talking about the resources and ways that people can really advance or take their mental health to the next level. So there may be some alumni that are interested in getting mental health assistance. How can people go about seeking resources? And so that's for both of you, whether it be in the health space or mental health. So just any tips, websites, services that you know of, all of the things. So we want to hear all of the things.
Yeah, and I'm happy to start here as well. So, first, I think if you're looking for a therapist, I recommend Psychology Today, which is a website, or inclusivetherapist.com, which is a website that I've used before to help you find a therapist who's going to meet your needs. Psychology Today is great. You can see what someone is trained in, if they have like a cultural competency certificate, and what types of therapy that they offer. I also recommend if you have insurance through your job, talk to your insurance provider about what resources are available for you there. And if you're not insured, you can also see if folks typically may have slots for low income individuals who may need additional support at some sort of scaled service. So don't let the fact that you're not insured stop you from seeking services. And then just some therapeutic resources that I find helpful. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI Georgia, has a community resource finder on their website. So that's going to include therapists, but also we know that for people who are battling mental illnesses, sometimes there's other things that you need help with, right? I can't afford food. I can't, my mental illness is debilitating, where I, need these additional resources. And they have those community resources there as well. And then just some books that I've read that I feel are really great. It's a book called Homecoming: Overcoming Fear and Trauma to Reclaim Your Whole Authentic Self. I didn't write the author's name down, but I think if you look up Homecoming: Overcoming Fear, you should be able to find that. And then a couple organizations. My organization is really focused on Black people, so these are going to be Black-centered organizations. And so that's the Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective, or Beam Health Collective. They're really great. Black Girl Smile, it's actually based here in Atlanta. And then Therapy for Black Girls, all organizations that we've worked with in the past, and I think are really great and useful.
Oh, come on. Long list. I hope y'all had a pen and paper and wrote it down. Okay, Mallory, I know she's about to come with a whole nother list. Come on, let's do it.
No. I love that list. That was a great list. I just had one more. Therapy Den is a great one for therapists as well, in addition to the ones that Matthew listed. That's honestly like my go-to for finding a therapist. And then also, I wanted to drop the suicide line. You can call or text it. It's 988 if you ever need that. And then also in Georgia, they have Georgia Crisis Access Line. You call this number if you're having a mental health crisis. They can come out and talk to you. Alana, I did just want to say one more thing, because it's just on my spirit, and I feel like somebody needed to hear it about what we were talking about before. Just like people in those jobs where you're feeling like you're like on the edge and you're about to crumble, like you got to get out of the job. You got to get out of the job before it gets worse, because it doesn't get better. And I think a lot of times we're in situations like that, we don't pay attention to how detrimental it is until we make a mess and we got to clean it up. So just as much as you can, when you realize that it's not a good fit, don't try to make it work. Don't try to see what happens. Start planning your exit strategy. I'm not saying go quit your job, now you're homeless. Start planning your exit strategy and get out of the job. So that was just the last thing I wanted to say about that.
Thank you. I think that was definitely necessary. And then before we get to the Q&A portion, I just do want to ask one more thing, Mallory, for anybody who may not be comfortable with doing talk therapy yet, what are some other forms of therapy or just ways that they can improve their mental health?
So I'm going to say, if the only reason why you're not doing talk therapy is because you're not comfortable, just be uncomfortable and do it anyway. Figure out why you're uncomfortable and start taking the steps to fix those steps that's making you uncomfortable. like, because there's no substitute for talking. Okay. And if you don't deal with the stuff, it's just going to come out in other ways. But to supplement that, or in the meantime, you can do journaling. You can do like written journaling to get the thoughts out of your head. You can do video journaling. You set up the camera, you just talk to the camera, you delete it. And you can also do voice memos. That helps. You want to get this stuff out of your head. The whole point is you're trying to release it. And then you can also do movement to release the tension that's in your body. It also, when you move and you exercise, it stimulates the happy chemicals in your brain. You can do the same thing with meditation to manage your anxiety and your stress and start a meditation practice. A lot of people think that meditation is clearing your mind. Really, the meditation practice is having your mind clear, noticing that it's not, with awareness, bringing it back without judgment, and doing that over and over again. That process right there, that is the meditation. So that can look like 5 minutes a day where you start that and you build up from there. Using a gratitude list where you start your day or end your day with 3 things you're grateful for. It also keeps a positive outlook, and it stimulates happy chemicals in your brain. And then, of course, I'm going to say mindful consumption, just like Matthew said. The socials be toxic, y'all. Be careful.
Thank you. I love it. So, our first question, we are from someone who's a lawyer. They said, how do you deal with having a career that kind of comes with trauma? So, in being a lawyer, they deal with different people's emergencies and traumas on the day to day. So, how do they, have that career and not let it affect their mental health?
Yeah. First, you have to acknowledge that it's okay to pivot, right? I think a lot of times when we're in jobs and careers, we think that this is the end all be all, and that if we can't do this, then we're a failure. That's not true. Nobody said that you need to be a trauma worker for 30 years. You can do something and be very good at it, and then do something else. And I think it's important to pay attention and know when you're reaching the point where this is not good for you anymore. Sometimes people do a career and they're completely fine with it, but then when they have a baby, then things change because they see the world differently. And you have to recognize that and start planning how you can move away from that if that happens. Now, if you're in it and you just need more strategies to be well, you can do any of the wellness things that we talked about. A great one, like I said, is breaking up your day and having a ritual at the end of your day and doing things that remind you of yourself outside of your work, spending time with friends and family, grounding yourself, going outside, doing things that bring you joy, picking up a new hobby. Any of those things can help you. But if you're deteriorating and you're not paying attention to that, you're just going to keep going down and down and down until you're in a crisis.
Matthew, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would just dive in a little bit on that point around community, right? There are other lawyers who are probably feeling the same way. And I think creating space to have that conversation with that group is really important. We recently, we being Black Health, hosted an event for public health professionals, right? Coming out of the pandemic, coming through, seeing, people dying, and specifically Black folks dying, we hosted an event to really talk about how do public health professionals take care of public health professionals, right? And so I think you really have to create space within your industry to acknowledge that this is an issue, that we're seeing trauma, we're experiencing trauma, and then how do we bring in other supports to really take care of us as a community? And doing that as a group can be really powerful. And so I'd say be open and vulnerable with the other people who may be experiencing the same thing, and then leverage the resources you're around you. So bring in therapists, bring in clinicians to support you. But I think Mallory is right. If it gets to a point where, you are deteriorating and you actually can't function in your life outside of work, then removing yourself from that environment is going to be really important.
I love that. We can't do anything alone. Like we need other people. Even though a lot of things in our lives are individual, we need other people. So thank you for that. Our next question, I don't want to get it wrong, so let me make sure. Can having high anxiety affect you wanting to do better in your job? Always questioning if you deserve to move up or scared of failing? Either one.
Yeah, definitely. It can. It sounds like, sometimes we be asking questions and we know the answer to it. The way that question was worded, I feel like whoever asked that, you know what's happening, and that's okay. I think that it might be helpful to do some deep diving to figure out where this anxiety is coming from, because we can't figure that out in a 40-minute call. But the anxiety around work and maybe not feeling like you deserve to be where you are, or feeling like you're not comparable with the people that you're around, or the fear of failure, it's coming from somewhere. So maybe just some exploration on that would be helpful. But of course, they can be related.
Yeah, nothing to add.
Okay. So our next question talks about, so you lose passion for your career after you graduated. How do you get that back? How do you jumpstart that? And I think that's a really big thing, because a lot of people end up with jobs or end up in fields that weren't what they majored in, but their major was their passion. How do I get back to that after I've been discouraged or rejected from something that, I spent a degree on, I spent 4 years working on, spent money on, and everybody told me no? How do I get back to that passion? How do I get back to wanting to apply for jobs in that career field?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, we invest a lot in ourselves. We invest a lot in order to do things that we think are going to bring us joy and bring us happiness. Um, something that a friend once told me is that, and I think take this with a grain of salt, but like your work and your job is really to support your life, right? So you need money in this society in order to pay rent, in order to feed yourself. It does not have to be your sole source of passion and joy. There are other aspects of your life that you can leverage and use to bring that passion and bring that joy back to your life. So you have to think of the things that you would do for free, right? Whether that's engaging with community or being with your friends, right? We have to look. Sometimes I think we really narrow in on our work as like it has to provide me income, it has to bring me joy. I need to be passionate about it. But ultimately, in this, and I could get really deep about this capitalist system, but we really just need, we need income to live and support our lives. And so I think really separating those two could be really important. And then I think, you want to find opportunities once you do have gainful employment to really, volunteer your time or leverage your outside activities to then bring that passion back, right? So if you find like, I'm really into, creating spaces of wellness for people, you may not necessarily get paid to do that, but you can still do that in your outside time. And so I think you have to think about where you're spending your time and how that aligns to your passions.
That was really good. I often think about like passion and purpose, and especially being Gen Z and about to hit my quarter century crisis age. I just think about how just because you're good at it doesn't mean it's your passion or doesn't mean it's your purpose. And actually taking the time to explore different things and not just looking at, oh, well, I was good at this one thing and sticking to it, or this is what everyone told me I should do or told me I was good at, but really looking at what you're passionate about. And it may not be something that ends up being a career. Fortunately for me, it did. I love working in the community, but as I grow in my career, there may come a time where I don't necessarily want to be in community affairs anymore. It doesn't mean I'll stop volunteering and helping out and those in need, but it may be a pivot for me. And so I think it's really good for people to understand that it's okay to pivot, and it doesn't mean you don't still love your passions, or it might just not be your purpose and what you're meant to do and create that niche for yourself. But Mallory, I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on this.
I was gonna kind of echo similar sentiments. I don't know that you always have to go back to that passion or have to connect that passion to the job that pays your bills. I think that also what you said, Alana, I agree. Like life is about exploration. And so if you're finding that this doesn't light you up the way it used to, I think it's okay to put it down and to go explore other things and then maybe come back. And I think it also goes with what we talked about earlier, as far as having hobbies and that being okay. And they're not to pay the bills, they're just to have fun and enjoy them. And then you have your job that pays your bills. And I think that having both of those makes it a little bit better.
Thank you. Just to end off with you all, what is one thing you wish people knew or acknowledged about mental health or health in general? And I'll start with you, Matthew.
Yeah, something I always come back to is that, health, mental health, it's a journey, right? It's a process. We always hear people talk about it as an outcome or a goal, right? I want to be healthy, or I want to, reach this goal weight, or I want to be, in this state of mental health and mental well-being. But it's a process, right? It's going to be something that we have to continue to work through, continuously work towards. And certainly there will be milestones and goals along the way. But it's something that we have to continue to practice. So I think health and well-being is a practice, and really not an end goal.
Thank you. Mallory?
I think that it's important for people to remember that health is intertwined, like mind, body, spirit, they all go together, they all affect each other, and you got to nurture all of them because neglect or care will manifest. I think a lot of times we think, we just do one and we're cool, and that's not how it works. And the other thing I'm going to say, and I hope that people don't think I hate social media, but I low key do, because the socials are a lie, and I see people underneath the social life, and I see all the stuff that's really going on. And so when I see people talking on the socials and they say mental health awareness, mental health, this, that, people are not really practicing that in real life. You can put the hashtag, but if you're not actually in your actual life processing, talking, caring for yourself, watering yourself, you're still going to be messed up behind the scenes. So I just want people to really like take the time, and I hate to say do the work, but I don't know what other thing to say, but do the work, because that's how you really notice the positive impact that you're seeking.
Listen, y'all were on their necks during this conversation, okay? There were a lot of gems dropped. There was a lot of things that people need to take accountability for. So I really just want to thank you both for coming on here and just not only highlighting the work that you've done since you've graduated from Georgia State, but also just really speaking into people, even though we aren't able to see them, but you really did speak a lot of life into people on taking care of themselves and also how they can take care of themselves while they're still at work. And so I really do appreciate you both for that. I want to give you time to just shout out or plug anything that you have upcoming or how people can connect with you outside of this conversation. So I'll go ahead and start with Matthew. Anything that you have coming up with Black Health or just how people can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew McCurdy on LinkedIn, you'll find me. For Black Health, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at BLKHLTH. We have an upcoming program, a Black Health Cares program, which will be a training program for undergraduate and graduate students around community advocacy, racial health equity. So we'll be launching that actually coming up next fall, but we'll have some messaging about that over the summer. So if you're interested in that, follow us, and I would love to hear from you.
So for me, you can see everything that I'm doing on my Linktree. So it's just linktree.com/connect with Mallory. And then I also have a personal mental health and wellness blog that I write for. It's called Sundays at the Well, sundaysatthewell.com. It's also on the Linktree. And yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you both. And this has been another installment of Best of Blue. Please connect with the Young Alumni Council on Instagram at GSU_YAC, just so we can do more events like this and also see you all in person. Don't forget, we have a third Thursday coming up this month, February 15th. Love to see you all there and have a great night. Thank you.